Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is stuck in Delhi and likely for another night because his official aircraft is unserviceable. So he and his entire delegation are stranded. But even as India hosts Justin Trudeau in Delhi for the G20 and beyond, Canada is busy green signaling what it loves best: the Khalistanis. The Khalistani terrorists are getting a free run, even as Canada's Prime Minister is our guest here in India. The government has given its nod to yet another Khalistani protest in British Columbia, that's in Vancouver. Khalistani terror group Seek for Justice arranged the referendum at a Gurudwara in Surrey. In a provocative speech, Khalistani terrorists gave an open threat to Prime Minister Modi, Home Minister Shah and Foreign Minister Dr. Jai Shankar. This comes a day after Prime Minister Modi conveyed India's very strong concerns about anti-India activities of Khalistani elements in Canada to his Canadian counterpart, Justin Trudeau. Well, notably, Canada gave permission to another protest while Trudeau is, like I said, stuck in India as his official aircraft has faced a technical snag. We have an update that a backup aircraft is on its way to pick up Prime Minister Trudeau from Delhi. Well, in the past couple of months, major anti-India incidents have been reported in Canada, including posters revealing the names, details, photographs of Indian ambassadors, high commissioners and officials in Canada, the United States and elsewhere, calling for harm to be inflicted on them. Despite all this, Prime Minister Trudeau has not taken a single bit of action, which makes many believe that he's being soft on Khalistani separatists because of local domestic compulsions. But Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's helpless sympathy and refusal to take action against Khalistani terrorists in Canada is only one part of the story. And it is on India today that another part of Canada's anti-India policy now stands fully revealed, and it has gone viral on social media. It's become a huge talking point. It all began with this comment by former IFS officer Ambassador Vivek Karchu during our G20 coverage. Listen very carefully.
Canada regularly denies visas to members of our security forces who have served in Jammu and Kashmir.
Right.
Canada has also denied visas to members of our services about which we do not talk about, and I don't wish to talk about, including very senior people who have served in these services. Canada, while asking for visa applications, demands that these security personnel should inform the Canadians of the places where they have served.
Yes.
That is very often confidential. Now, I do not know if the government of India has ever objected to it or it has taken it up. It goes back to the time when I was secretary in the ministry and in charge of the management of relations with Canada. I remember then, and I think this is important for your viewers to know,
yes, very important,
that they had done so with a member of the Border Security Force. And I'd called the Canadian High Commissioner in and I'd said, this is unacceptable. And then I'd retired soon thereafter. So it's been 12 years since my retirement, and I think 13 years since this particular incident. I personally feel that the time has come when the government of India should send out an advisory to all security personnel, including retired personnel, that they will not respond to such information being sought by the Canadians with regard to visa applications.
This is an incredibly unknown and yet a truly, truly shocking and upsetting aspect of India-Canada relations. And viewer, I have to tell you right off the bat that this is not something that has happened now. It's been going on for years together, possibly even decades. After India Today played out what Ambassador Karchu had said during our G20 coverage, I've been flooded with messages from veteran military personnel who said Thank you, India Today, for highlighting this issue. This has been festering for a long time and nobody has read the Riot Act to Canada. Well, that's what we're doing now and the government is watching. Joining me live now, Gaurav Sawant, our managing editor who helped me put this story out. Also with us live, we're privileged to have 3 veterans of the Indian military who have personally faced these questions and visa denial at the hands of the Canadian government. These are people who have put their lives on the line for India and India's sovereignty, and they were asked questions about where they served when they were in service, where they were positioned, where they were appointed, and on the basis of that, they were denied visas. Joining me live, Colonel Alankar Bharadwaj, Colonel Rajendra Kochar, and Air Commodore Kedar Thakkar. I want to go across first to Colonel Bharadwaj. Colonel, welcome. This is, this entire Canadian policy, most people didn't know about it. I have covered defense for years together, and I also was shocked because I was not aware of it either. Take us through very quickly your experience of what happened when you applied for a visa, sir.
Thanks, Shiv, for inviting me on your show. I'm very glad that you picked up such an important topic, and I would say it's a little touchy topic for a number of defense officers who face problems when they apply for a Canadian visa. Now, talking about my personal experience, I have a couple of relations, friends in US and Canada, and I applied for this visa with both the countries way back in 2009. Now, 72 hours after applying for US visa, I got my visa, and then I applied for the Canadian visa. So the very first question, which was put across, and I got a communique that they want to know, where have you served? What are the locations? Probably who's your boss? And in particular, I was guided by my travel agent that, probably they want to know whether there any kind of, problems you've had in Jammu and Kashmir. And what guidance I got, I wrote very categorically that, look, I'm a logistics officer and never in my life I have, got involved in active insurgency. Now, after this, there was a total for good about 3 weeks. And the golden days, you had to buy a ticket first and then apply for a visa.
Yes.
My family was traveling with me, and I got my visa from Canadians after 22, 23, and just 2 days before the flight. So had I not got my visa and the passport in time, I would have my flight to the US also. Now, the ordeal did not get over at that time itself. Once I landed up in the US and I was traveling to Canada, along with my relations who happened to be US nationals. Again, the vehicle was stopped, and good about for 15, 20 minutes, the person at the border outpost questioned me about my, stay in Assam, what about the operations I did in Jammu and Kashmir. It was only after I laid stress and I said, firstly, look, there's no case against me. Number 2, I've served in United Nations from 2000 to 2001, and people have done a background check.
Yes.
That he let me go. And I've traveled quite a lot, and I have never experienced this kind of a thing. I've been to about 27 odd countries, but it was not a very pleasant experience getting.
This is, I would take it a step further, Colonel Bharadwaj, and call this absolute humiliation. Even if you are a logistics officer, even if you're a frontline Rashtriya Rifles soldier or officer, my simple question is, how dare a country like Canada, inflict such questions and discriminate and decide on visa issuance? Of course, it's their prerogative, but on these considerations, India is a democracy, India is a sovereign country, the armed forces operate under the government. Who the hell is Canada to decide whether to give visas to someone who has not operated in Jammu and Kashmir or the Northeast, and some who have not? Colonel Kochar, you have no doubt also served in frontline areas like J&K and the Northeast. I hear you also faced the same thing when you wanted a Canadian visa.
I have my personal experience in the sense that I had applied for my visa on 8th of Feb. And the sequence of events which have taken place thereafter, the 17th I get a letter for biometrics, 22nd the biometrics is done, 28th Feb biometrics is completed. Thereafter, on 26th May, I am asked for additional information which you had been referring now, the date of promotion, the appointments held, operational areas where you served and all. So it was very difficult to give me all that information because that is in the national interest
Yes.
that I would need to disclose to anyone. So I simply gave a certificate that the information sought for cannot be given, keeping in view the national interest of my country. And thereafter, on 18th July, I got a mail that they have received my additional input and they are processing it. And till date, now 7 months have elapsed. I have no input whether I'll be getting my visa, I'll not be getting my visa, is it being rejected? And
Unbelievable.
I'm actually in a confused state of mind as of now.
This is absolutely unbelievable. And Gaurav Sawant, our managing editor who's with us, he's one of the few journalists who actually reported this story over 10 years ago. Gaurav, I'm going to come to you on that question in just a moment because I'm still reeling in shock that this has been allowed to continue for so long. But I want to go to Air Commodore Kedar Thakur, who has also faced this. Air Commodore, we saw your tweet in response to our broadcast highlighting this issue. Take us through what you faced, sir.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, so very kind of you to have picked up this issue, which is not really being done by anybody else.
Thank you, sir.
You know, my brother-in-law is a Canadian citizen. He's been residing for last 20 years and his son was getting married. So I applied on my own online for myself and my wife in the month of March. And within 1 month, my wife's visa came through. I thought in a few days' time, mine would also come through. It didn't happen. Another 1 month goes, and then I get a mail that please furnish these additional details since you were in military service. And the details they asked for were really shocking. They say where all you have been posted, what were your roles at each of those postings in my 35 years of the service, who were my commanding officers, in which all operations I participated, what was my role in those operations, which were the other units who participated in those operations and what were their roles. This is the kind of information they had asked for. I found it ridiculous. I replied to them that it is not possible for me to furnish. I have been a air traffic control officer and I have been a Air Force police officer. And during that, I have not been found wanting on any of these things. I have not involved in any other untoward incident or activity. And so visa may be granted. This was about 5 months back. And since then, I haven't heard. I suppose, although I have not served in J&K, but I suppose that because I have been Air Force police officer and I had also been a pro-marshal presiding over the Air Force security, probably that's one of the reasons, like we see in media, that they are very averse to permit such people.
I want to make one thing very clear, because Colonel Bharadwaj, Colonel Kochar and Air Commodore Thakur are being very gentlemanly by saying that they had clarified that they have nothing untoward against them. They were not part of a counterinsurgency operations, etc., etc. Let me make it very clear. And Gaurav, correct me if I'm wrong here, that Canada has no business denying a visa on this basis to anyone. Let them be Rashtra Rifles, let them be Assam Rifles, let them operate in the Northeast, let them operate in Arunachal, let them operate in J&K, I don't care. How dare they have this policy, Gaurav?
Shiv, it is a flawed policy, but it is a policy that exists. And these are 3 veterans. There are several serving officers, there are several retired officers whose cases are still pending. Of course, visa is a sovereign right. It is Canada's right whether they want to give visa to a country, to a citizen of any country, or they want to deny it. And they use this as pressure tactics against India. Ambassador Vivek Kajju had raised it when he was a secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs. In fact, the Canadian envoy was summoned and given a dressing down. But then, there isn't much leverage that a country has given this situation. So much so that Canada wants to know details the moment a veteran applies for a visa. They want to know the name of his commanding officer, the telephone number of his commanding officer, the years of posting in Jammu and Kashmir and Northeast, and operations participated in and activities done. They want to pin India down on alleged human rights cases, and India said there is no way. In fact, the Ministry of Defense and the Forces Headquarters, they've issued directives that no such details are to be furnished by any officer. But then it depends on a veteran whether he wants a visa or not, and then it becomes an individual case. There are cases pending even today when such information is sought. But then it's Canada's sovereign right. Point one. Point two, you know Canada's attitude and double standards, Shiv.
Yes.
The manner in which they talk about human rights here, and the way Justin Trudeau's government cracked down on truckers, the world saw that, and the way their inaction against the Khalistani extremists and supporters, it just reeks of double standards. But then that's the way the dispensation in Canada is, Shiv.
This is, these are double standards of a most shocking variety. Am I to understand, are we to understand, Colonel Bharadwaj, then, that it's a hit and miss kind of thing? You know, as someone who is a soldier or an officer of the Indian Armed Forces, among the most professional in the world, among the armed forces with the greatest degree of oversight in the world, operating in UN peacekeeping missions all across the world in the most dangerous zones, for such officers, it is a hit and miss to enter a place like Canada?
Absolutely. There is no laid down timelines. This is very, very important. If you want to deny it, that you spell it out that within, a certain number of days, you're going to say no, or you're going to say yes, or seek additional information. But I would also like to speak on behalf of some of the serving officers, probably who are not on the... Just imagine an officer who applies for a leave, and you know that the leave in a unit is not that one gets up and gets a leave. It's a whole setup in which the leave is worked out for all officers.
Yes.
If he doesn't get his visa on time, see the complete administrative fabric of a subunit where the officer can't go on leave, and when he gets his visa, he asks for leave. That time it's not possible. So it's going to affect to absolutely in depth the armed forces people who are serving now. Retired officers, yes, one can wait for a longer time, but there have been cases where people have had problems. Some old person is there staying with a son or a daughter out there. They've called for that. That's a last wish, and the person is not able to get visa. He can't go and see an old ailing parent because the visa is not granted, and the old man passes off. So this is something which is very, very sad. What's happening, especially with the defense officers by the Canadian authorities.
Yes.
They should be a little more considerate.
Commodore Thakur, as you heard Gaurav said, this has been going on for a long time, well over 12, 15 years. When previous governments were there, this issue has been taken up. Angry letters have been written to the Canadian government. BSF officers, also paramilitary, not just armed forces, but also paramilitary at BSF and Central Reserve Police Force officers have also been denied similar visas. So it's obviously a policy decision that Canada has taken. Is there any leverage you believe that can be used should the government take it up in a bigger way? Because if it's been going on for so long, it looks like अरे ऐसे ही है, कुछ नहीं कर सकते हम.
No, sir. It's not so. It is not so. We are in a much better and much powerful position now than what we were about 15 years back. The world listens to us. There is no better example than the G20, which has just concluded. And we all have seen how the Prime Minister of Canada was on the sidelines during the complete event. So India certainly has a position, and I think the Prime Minister has made it abundantly clear. There is no doubt in my mind that it is the Khalistan influence and the dependence on the support from that party which is forcing the present government to behave and to treat like this. It started 15 years back. I also done some research. A large number of such cases have been happening. They are on the rise. If we don't stop them now, they will continue like this.
Gaurav, very important point raised by the Air Commodore. He says this is linked to the domestic compulsions. It is because of Khalistanis that this policy has actually been allowed to fructify in this manner. For appeasement of Khalistanis, such questions are asked of the Indian Armed Forces. My question, Gaurav, also is, A, is that what you hear as well? And B, if the Indian government has now read the Riot Act to Trudeau on the issue of Khalistan, do you feel that this issue should also be revived now that India has changed?
Shiva, diplomats are very polite. Our diplomats are also very firm, and in their own way, they've read out the riot act to Canada. But again, it becomes a question of leverage.
Yeah.
What is that leverage that India has? In the past, when a serving senior officer of one of the Central Armed Police Forces was denied a visa, or the visa was delayed, India had taken it up very strongly. And to send across a message, certain imports were reduced. They were curtailed from Canada. But that is very subtle diplomatic messaging. You'd recall when one of our diplomats was ill-treated in the United States of America, certain privileges that were extended to US diplomats, they were curtailed for some time until things came back on an even keel. So in their own way, action is taken, but our leverage to an extent is restricted. India has, to a very large extent, sidelined Justin Trudeau, but then the effort is always to improve relationship and coax and cajole them to ensure that they set this anomaly right. It's more persuasion than anything else at this stage until we gain greater leverage, Shiv.
Well, given the successes of India at the G20, I think India should not let such things just lie. I agree with what the Air Commodore said. India has changed. It's a new country that is perceived in a very, very different way, as Gaurav, who was on the sidelines of the G20, getting that ringside view, reported for us over the entire weekend. So I want to assure Colonel Bharadwaj, Colonel Kochar, Air Commodore Thakur, that this is an issue we will be taking very seriously. It's been going on for a long time, but we will not only highlight it, but we will try and force some kind of solutions. This is unacceptable to me, unacceptable to India today, and unacceptable to India. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you, Gaurav, for joining me on this show. This is a story that we take very seriously, and we will continue to highlight it on India Today and on India First. Thanks for watching.